Every so often when reading a book, you come across those sentences or paragraphs which you instinctively recognise as really good writing. In fact, beautiful writing at times, and you just have to stop and read them again. You know, you want the words to ring in your ears or to float around your head like a warm satin breeze. Recently, I was reading Eugenie Grandet again by Balzac, and one of those paragraphs just struck me. Now, if you're a reader or a writer, you'll be interested in this video because we're going to explore how Balzac crafts something so exquisite, and it helps us with more appreciation. Because although on the surface this just looks like a description of a street and some old doors in an old town in France, beneath it there is a reflection on memory, on time, on lives once lived, on deeper meaning and passion and what makes sense in life. And so we're going to read that paragraph and then break it down and just see how Balzac writes so beautifully. So we'll just read the paragraph first from Eugenie Grandet, and then afterwards we'll come back and we'll see what we can glean of the craft that Balzac uses to create his atmosphere, his solemnity, and the beauty of his writing. Still further along the street there are more pretentious house doors studded with huge nails. On these our forefathers exercised their ingenuity, tracing hieroglyphs and mysterious signs which were once understood in every household, but all clues to their meaning are forgotten now. They will be understood no more of any mortal. In such wise would a Protestant make his profession of faith. There also would a leaguer curse Henry IV in graven symbols. A burgher would commemorate his civic dignities, the glory of his long-forgotten tenure of office as alderman or sheriff. On those old houses, if we could but read it, the history of France is chronicled. Do you get a sense of the atmosphere in that? He's drawing us to the past. He's making us reflect upon lives lived. And there's something that touches us and we recognize when we see old buildings. But how does he actually achieve this? Well, let's see what we can find. Now, the first thing I notice, and it may not be something that affects you much, but I like this word still. It gives me a feeling of ongoing momentum. Because for the page before this paragraph, Balzac has been describing the town of Saumur, which was once a French fortress enclave city for the Protestants in the religious wars. But he's been describing it, and now we move on further. He could easily have just said further along the street. But in this translation, because we must remember it's translated, still stops it being just a matter-of-fact feeling for me. It feels like I'm being drawn mentally on a tour guide, with a tour guide, following them. And there's ever-opening exploration turning up, not just a matter-of-fact, there's this, there's this, there's this. So I like that word still, but you may not be fussed by it. But then we do get to a word here, pretentious house doors. The doors of a house often are quite evocative for us. There are actual Instagram accounts that are simply dedicated to photographs of doorways around the world. This access to a different place and even a different time. And he singles out the house doors. But pretentious tells us something of the occupants. Because pretentious, we often use it in a very bad way, a negative way, but pretentious means to put on a front, to put on a show. So these occupants are striving to be better. And as we're talking about a medieval town, we're talking about people who could have just been in the lower orders, but are building their way up in importance. This is a striving that we still respect today, to better oneself. And it gives us a sense of growth that's been going on in history, of lives before us. Then we come to doors that are studded with huge nails. Not large, huge. This is grand. It feels somewhat dark and formidable. You know exactly what kind of doors are being talked about, these great wooden doors which have got studs in them. But if you put, studs could just hold the door together. But often if you studded the whole door and with huge nails, that was a defensive measure. That was so that if someone tried to break in with an axe, the big nails would blunt the blade of the axe, even crack it. And so we get this idea of struggle coming out of it. We get a sense of age because this whole studded idea, we don't really do it much anymore. And even in Balzac's time wasn't so much done. So let's go to the next sentence, because here is something fascinating about the craft of writing. On these our forefathers exercised their ingenuity. This phrase, on these our forefathers, this in rhetoric is known as anastrophe or anastrophe. And what it means, it's an inverting of syntax, the arrangement of words. Because if you were to look at this sentence again, we wouldn't say in normal speech, on these our forefathers. We would say our forefathers used their ingenuity on these doors, is how we would say it. These doors would come at the end, a prepositional phrase, but it's pulled to the front. And what this does is it slows us down. It slows us down to see. But also it has a particular effect as well. Do you notice it gives the effect of a sermon? On these our forefathers. There's something grand about this. In fact, what I would call it is it's elegiac. So you think of an elegy, it's an oration given over something lost. And that's what he's looking at, a historic part of the city. So we get this feeling. Look how we're being manipulated to feel a sense of loss, but a loss that was grand, that we feel we're now lacking something important. The next word, choice of word, exercised, it gives me the idea of a prerogative. You think of the royal prerogatives, the royals can exercise certain rights that they have. And we, I suppose, you could say you have a certain right if you're the parent of a family, kids have to listen to you kind of thing. It's a right. He could easily have said that on these doors, our forefathers carved images, carved symbols, but exercise their ingenuity. Do you see how he's building a personality in the past? A fascination for us with what were these people like? Exercising this sense again, work, striving, and ingenuity. We appreciate ingeniousness. It fascinates us in other people. And then we come to what they actually put on the doors, and it's hieroglyphs, mysterious signs. I don't know about you, but just those words make me tingle. There's something about the human psyche that loves forbidden knowledge, that has a particular enamored relationship with lost artifact, lost things, lost knowledge. In fact, they both point sort of what you could say is towards the arcane, towards runic hieroglyphs, mysterious signs. You think of these old folkloric tales, but there's something deep past about them. So again, he's still building this sepia tint, this wash over what is currently in front of us, this old house, as if we've got this numinous, we could just put our hand through something and we'd be in that same world and where that house was, but hundreds of years back, where we would be able to read these hieroglyphs and mysterious signs. And he actually mentions this idea of past and lost knowledge. He says, which were once understood in every household. It used to be common. Everyone in this town, there was a whole history going on in this town, a whole society, a whole world, a whole way of living. They understood this. And then this beautiful, beautiful bit of writing. But all clues to their meaning are forgotten now. They will be understood no more of any mortal. Notice first the weight. Something I've come to appreciate more and more and more the more I study literature and try to appreciate and extract its beauty from it, is the role of cadence. Although this is prose and not poetry, still rhythm, cadence, the rise and fall, the contrasting of two parts of a sentence to each other, balancing the weight, is just hypnotic. All clues to their meaning are forgotten now. They will be understood no more of any mortal. That dash right there just almost gives us a slight aside. They will be understood no more of any mortal. But if we look more closely at what's going on, this line is really quite something, because first, they are forgotten now. This is present tense, and it's passive. So he's talking about the people who live in Saumur as he's writing this story. They've forgotten these hieroglyphs and mysterious signs. And it gives us the idea that it's sad that that's been lost, but also that they don't even notice them anymore because they have no meaning. And this is really important for my video next week, which comes from a paragraph over the page from this. And there's so much to learn about writing and appreciating reading from this one paragraph here, because it sets up how he's going to contrast the present occupants of Saumur. But notice, forgotten now, present tense, but then this break and a brief thought. They will be. Notice that is future tense. Isn't that interesting? Future tense. Understood no more. It's a decree. This is final. It's a decree, a rule, a law. Everything is going to pass out of our understanding. This, whatever was so important to these people back then, is lost. And yet, there are the traces of it in these old doors. It reminds us that we are but a comma in the script of history. Our lives, so significant to us, are no different to the lives that were significant to them. But where have they gone? And notice specifically this word mortal. The gods may remember what those hieroglyphs mean, but we are mortal. We pass out of time. So this whole thing is a memento mori, which occurs a lot in literature. This endless, beautiful, sublime, overwhelming sense that we are finite, and that a great cosmic scheme comes before us. We are just at the thin blade edge of a whole weave and embroidery of history, of lives, of passions, of loss, of success, of failure, of victories, of triumphs, of striving, of striving, of striving. And we strive. And we look back and we think, what meaning they had back then for themselves. What is it? Now, speaking of that, it says mortal. Well, you'd imagine the narrator is mortal. And he says, these carvings won't be understood by any mortal. And yet, the very next line, tells us what the carvings are about. In such wise would a Protestant make his profession of faith. There also would a leaguer curse Henry IV in graven symbols. How does the narrator know what they mean? Well, he doesn't. He's doing what we do. We're drifting into imagination. If the narrator knows that Saumur was very involved in the French religious wars, and it was once a Protestant enclave protected by Henry IV from the Catholics, well, we could imagine what these hieroglyphs and mysterious symbols could mean in the door. And notice their importance. It's the deep inner spiritual, the religious fervour of people that lived there. What was important to them, or the political persuasions of them, like the leaguers. What's important to them? This will contrast to what comes next week when we do a paragraph over the page. But just a quick note on what it actually means. So in Saumur, the Protestants were allowed to actually worship freely, and Henry IV was trying to allow Protestants to worship as well as Catholics, but let them have this town. Whereas the Leaguers, means the Catholic League, they thought it was an abomination to let any other religion be in France, and therefore they would curse Henry IV engraven symbols. So they carved their particular political and religious persuasions into the door. What I love, again, just a touch that happens a lot in great writing, curse and graven, these are both allusions to scripture. You think of graven, especially graven images, and incanting curses was something forbidden in the Bible. This word graven especially captures so much, and it wouldn't have been lost on people, that one of the things the Protestants said the Catholics got wrong was the use of images in worship. They said it shouldn't be done because the Bible says don't worship an image, and they have their statues. I'm not either way talking about any of that in this video, but see how Balzac links that graven with the Catholic, the Liga. I just think it adds such tiny details like that add such flavour in a lot of writing. But it's not just religious. A burgher, or a businessman who's got the title as a businessman in the town, would commemorate his civic duties, because civic is important because it's doing good for the town, for the community. It's not purely for self. How do you leave your mark in improving the town? And there it is again, the memento mori, the glory of his long forgotten tenure of office. I don't know why that happened. The glory, excuse it being an arrow, I don't know how I did that. This word glory, again, we're getting this grand and solemn speech, and long forgotten, this memento mori again, the idea of a past time. These are people like us who are trying to do things where life to them, instances in life, were important and of great moment to them, like we do, but we forget them. We can sometimes just be lost in our own time. Do you see how he's built up with this sort of elegy, a reverence for the people of the past and the greatness of the past, that there is this weave of history and a larger cosmic order than just right now. He mentions their titles, and then look at this ending. Oh, I absolutely love this. On those old houses, if we could but read it, the history of France is chronicled. Do you hear the rhythm in that? The balance of that sentence? I know it's translated, but I did look it up in French, although I can't speak French, and found it was as balanced. It's so pleasing to the ear. It brings a finality, and it makes us pause for breath. It makes us pause for reflection. It makes us yearn for the importance in life. How does he do that? Again, we have this anastrophe. We have the syntax changed around here. In fact, correctly, in standard grammar, you would have the history of France is chronicled in those old houses, if we could read it. You would have the history of France, this bit, at the first part of the sentence. But this is a particular device which is worth knowing if you appreciate or want to know why there's a feeling we get at certain lines. And it's called the periodic sentence. If you look at it, the main clause of this sentence is right here at the end. It's saved to the end. And the final verb, chronicled, you have to wait to the end of the sentence before the sentence can make sense. If you read it without that, you can't make sense of the sentence. And that's why it's a periodic sentence. It ends with the period. And it has an amazing effect. I'll do it in the style of a staircase and just see if you can notice this and feel it. On those old houses, If we could but read it, the history of France is chronicled. Up, 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 down. And it feels so final. And it's final. It has a catharsis, I suppose you would say, a release, and it's satisfying. And because of that, it ennobles the whole atmosphere. It ennobles the atmosphere of the piece into something very important. So in this description of Saumur, we get this one paragraph that comes in where he breaks from the description itself in the present and briefly makes us think of how many lives walked these streets, lived in these houses, had thoughts, had goals, had conflicts, had aspirations, had worries and fears. And now we, hundreds of years later, do we notice it? Do we sense our tie to other times? I just think that's absolutely beautiful. So by all means, go back and read the paragraph again. Well, I hope you enjoyed that contemplation and breakdown of one paragraph by Balzac, trying to really appreciate how he creates the effects that he does. Next week, I will be doing a paragraph from over the page from that, because that in itself is a great example of how to write, and write brilliantly, and how to appreciate reading even more fully. Leave a comment down below. Who are your favourite authors when it comes to their style of writing? Have you read much of Balzac? Until the next time, I wish you joy in whatever you read.